So you're here for email tactics customers hate and why marketers continue to use them. This webinar was inspired by this article by Mark Schaefer, Why Marketing is Lost, Why Marketing Technology is Sucking the Life Out of the Marketing Profession. And in this article, in this blog post, Mark says, in my own beloved profession of marketing, the primary application of technology is to find increasingly sophisticated ways to annoy people. Today, marketing is best known for doing the stuff that people hate. He says misuse of technology is the central problem. We're becoming over-reliant on data and dashboards to know what to do. Decisions are based on probability analysis versus common sense and good taste. We'll soon see some epic marketing failures. The problem is just going to get worse, much worse, as marketing technology becomes synonymous with creating consumer hate at scale. Ouch, that's crazy. Is he right? To a certain degree, I think that he is. But just admitting that we may have a problem isn't really enough. It's more important to understand why brands are abusing the email channel, annoying their customers to their own detriment. So here's some justifications that we hear. And you'll see if maybe you hear some of these same justifications at your company or elsewhere. It's not illegal. One of our competitors is doing it. I bet folks hear that one a lot. We have 3 vendors that are anxious to help us with this. Look at those amazing email metrics. So over the next 45 minutes, we're going to discuss major reasons why brands use email tactics consumers hate, and why those reasons may be faulty. Along the way, we're going to share some great litmus research and share some examples to flesh everything out. As Justine said, my name is Chad White. I'm the research director at Litmus. I'm also the author of the book Email Marketing Rules, and over 3,000 blog posts and articles on email marketing trends and best practices. For those of you who aren't familiar with Litmus, we have an email creative platform that helps you make your email better. We have a great number of tools that are part of that platform, including email previews, which allow you to see how your email renders in all of the most popular email clients around the world. We have email analytics, which give you analytics that you may not be having in your ESP. So it's great supplemental data to help you make great decisions. Also, we have Litmus Builder, which is a from the ground up, built for email HTML editor. All kinds of awesome functionality in that code editor that's just designed for making email better, faster, more easily, and with fewer errors. And also a great tool, spam testing, which allows you to identify potential deliverability problems before you hit send and correct them, so your deliverability stays high. So let's get to it. So the first reason that we think that brands use tactics that consumers hate is because of bad expectations set by, in particular, US email laws. We think that the laws here in the US have set the wrong expectations for email behavior among brands. Just because something is legal doesn't mean you're protected from harm. So a little bit of background, the CAN-SPAM Act of 2003 essentially legalized spamming in the US by enshrining opt-out email marketing. Yes, you have to include an unsubscribe link in all of your emails, and that link has to be functional, and a few other things, but for the most part, you can email anybody in bulk until they say stop. Couple that with weak US consumer privacy laws, and that has empowered data brokers and all companies to sell and buy data on consumers sort of at will. So in reaction to that, the US has unfortunately become a haven for spammers. And it's caused a lot of brands to believe that it's frankly okay to spam consumers and to buy and sell their contact information, and even to buy and sell quote unquote permission, which I think is pretty hilarious. They think that that's possible. As of the second quarter of 2017, the United States was the second largest source of spam in the world. that is quite sad and not a good thing for the U.S. and definitely not a good thing for the email marketing industry. And also we see that subscriber acquisition sources that are not awesome are still being used by quite a few brands. This is not a full list of acquisition sources that we have surveyed people about, but you can see that purchased email lists that's being done by over 17% of brands. Email list rental by over 9%, and co-registration by about 9%. And I'll explain in a little more detail exactly what's included in each of those, but these are like fairly common acquisition methods. And definitely purchase lists is not the best, very dangerous. So in reaction to this environment that lax US laws has created, inbox providers have really become increasingly heavy-handed about deliverability, design, and a bunch of other things. They are really the ones that set all the rules. They're the ones that, kind of by de facto become, the legal entities that create all the laws about behavior in the email marketing industry, or just email usage in general. So inbox providers have tons of power because of this power vacuum that's been created. And that power vacuum has also made it so that Canada and the countries in the EU and elsewhere have had to create very strong anti-spam and privacy laws in reaction. So because of all of that, we still see blocking to be very high. This is when an inbox provider, say a Gmail or an Outlook, doesn't allow any of your emails to go to its users. Roughly a third of brands say that they've been blocked at least once in the past year, and some of those folks were blocked several times. Blacklistings are also fairly prevalent. About 15% of brands say that they've been blacklisted at least once in the last 12 months, and a lot of that tracks back to these acquisition practices that are not great and that are perfectly legal here in the US. So these include email list rental, co-registration, and purchased email lists. We see here on this chart, it shows that the prevalence of folks that use these acquisition sources versus brands that don't, they're much more likely to be blocked or blacklisted. Significantly more likely. It may be somewhat surprising that that list purchases are sort of in the number 3 position on this list, and that email list rental is number 1. And that did, we'll be honest, cause us to scratch our heads pretty hard. So we actually did some additional research, and what we found is that that email list rental, that the companies that provide these have been very savvy marketers. In many cases, essentially what they're offering is list purchase, but they know that people know that that's bad, or certainly a lot of people know that that's bad, and that they wouldn't be able to make sales, and so they've sort of branded themselves as list rental companies, even though if you get into the nitty-gritty of it, you're essentially buying a list. And so the archetypal list rental, what happens is that someone owns a list, someone owns an audience, and you create a message that you want sent to that audience. The owner of that audience, the owner of that list, sends your message to their audience using their sender name, their unsubscribe links, and so they suffer all of the all of the fallout if the message to audience is not a good match. And what our research found is that ideal situation, that archetypal list rental, is not happening very often. Many times, the opt-out link will be for the list renter instead of the list owner, and lots of other sort of permutations, including essentially all-out list purchase. So not good. So that's why list rental is at the top. It's a pretty muddy field, and a lot of sort of misdirection, essentially. Co-registration is when you go to someone's site to sign up for email, and they offer you the opportunity to sign up for email from partners. And the reason why that's problematic is because there's not great context for those additional brands. You may think you want their emails, or you may think you remember that brand, and oftentimes there's a disconnect, or there's regrets once you start getting those emails. So that's why that's problematic. But all three of these methods are ones that we would highly recommend that you avoid. So despite clear dangers in terms of being blacklisted and blocked, 27% of brands, more than a quarter of brands, are using at least one of those three acquisition sources. And it's at least in part because it's not illegal. Clearly, plenty of other people are doing it, so it's, quote unquote, working. And there's lots of companies that offer those services and software to do those things, which legitimizes those methods. Essentially, in the name of not restricting corporate behavior, the US continues to condone reckless and irresponsible behaviors that not only hurt consumers, but hurt the brands that exercise those rights to do those behaviors. Essentially, you're able to buy a gun and shoot yourself in the foot. So if you want to dig into more about what CAN-SPAM requires and why it doesn't require nearly enough and why it does harm to US businesses, it's a great post on the Litmus blog that you can check out. And again, we're tweeting along at Litmus app, hashtag Litmus Live, all of the things that I'll be referencing during the webinar. So rather than setting the standard for the world, the US's lax email and privacy laws have really created this pretty extreme power vacuum in the legal system. And Canada and the EU have stepped in to kind of fill that void. And they have brought forward very strong laws. And essentially, the disconnect that we currently have is that the US is the only country the only major country that doesn't require consent for email. And that kind of puts us at a bit of a disadvantage. There's a pretty big gap between our behavior here in the US and what's expected elsewhere. CASL, the Canadian anti-spam law, went into full effect in July of 2017, and GDPR, which even goes beyond what CASL required folks to do, is going into effect in just a few months at the end of May of this year. So the most important thing to realize about these laws is that they apply to all brands that are emailing consumers in those countries. It doesn't matter where your company is based, where you're operating, that doesn't matter at all. It only matters where your email recipients are. And both of those laws establish strong standards around getting expressed consent, which means no more pre-checked boxes for opt-in. It means no more hidden consents in terms and conditions. And both of those laws have very large penalties for violators. CASL has already handed out some penalties for violations, and the penalties in the EU are even bigger. So we could have a whole webinar just on CASL and GDPR, but if you want to learn just sort of the highlights of what you need to know about those, actually more than the highlights, we have a couple of great blog posts on the Litmus blog, one CASL debunked and one on GDPR and what it means for email marketers. So to summarize, being CAN-SPAM compliant doesn't protect your brand's emails from being blocked or blacklisted. In fact, it provides almost no protections at all, being CAN-SPAM compliant. And if you do send emails to subscribers in other countries, you have to comply with their laws, which we find consistently to be something that surprises some marketers. Just because you're a US brand doesn't mean you only have to follow CAN-SPAM. You need to follow the laws in other countries. Let's talk about technology misuse. And this was one of the major themes of Mark Schaefer's article. So brands' email tactics, the problem is that they tend to be company-centric instead of customer-centric. And you can differentiate between these two types of tactics by asking yourself a couple of questions. Who does this primarily benefit? Is it benefiting my company, or is it benefiting my customers? And where are those benefits? Are they showing up in my subscriber metrics, or are they showing up essentially just in my campaign metrics? So Jeff Bezos over at Amazon, he says that when things get complicated, we simplify by asking what's best for the customer. And then we take that as an article of faith. If we do that, it'll work out in the long term. I think that is spectacular advice, and I think that was definitely sort of one of the big things that that Mark Schaefer was trying to get at. Don't jettison your gut when you have data in front of you. And there's lots of email tools and tactics that deliver protections or benefits to both parties. Great things like A/B testing software, email preview software, spam filter testing, email authentication, email address verification services. These are great tools that benefit both brands and consumers. However, there's some really great technologies that, if used improperly, can abuse customers and annoy them. So I want to talk about two of them, email automation and pop-up email sign-up forms. So email automation is fantastic, really one of the biggest differentiators in the email industry right now. Our research has found that successful email marketing programs are 109% more likely than less successful ones to generate at least half their email marketing revenue from automated emails. Going forward, the percentage of brands that are generating at least half of their email marketing revenue from automated emails is only going to grow. However, it is a tool that can be misused. You want to avoid annoying your customers by doing a few things. One, you want to do withhold tests, and that's where you essentially don't send a group of subscribers your automated email. So that's how you can be sure that this automated email is adding value, is by comparing it to people who aren't getting it. That's a very important thing to do with automated emails, especially if you're introducing new ones. Number two, make sure you're not interrupting natural behaviors. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Shopping cart abandonment. This is a very natural consumer behavior. It's very natural for consumers to fill their carts up with stuff and walk away. Tons of carts get abandoned all the time, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't coming back. Quite a few people will come back on their own, and that's called, you want to look at the natural rate of return. Look at folks that are returning on their own, and you want to make sure that your shopping cart abandonment emails are triggered sort of on the backside of that curve, that natural rate of return. That way you're not sending emails to people who are returning to their cart anyway. You don't want to interrupt or get in between like people's sort of natural shopping habits. It's sort of the equivalent is that overly aggressive salesperson in the store. You know, just because someone is taking their time and kind of wandering around and maybe even, you know, it's spending too much time in your opinion, that doesn't mean that they're taking too much time for their own process. And make sure that you're not like being overly aggressive. Sort of, you know, again, think of it in terms of that store parallel. Third, you want to make sure you establish hierarchies and conditions among your automated emails. You know, all automated emails are not created equal. They're not worth the same amount. And you want to make sure that one automated email is not tripping on another one. So for instance, if during a 30-minute period, someone were to visit your website, they were to browse, and then leave your site, so you got a browse abandonment situation, but then they come back, you know, say, you know, 10 minutes later, and they put something in their shopping cart, and then they abandon that. Well, now you have two potential triggers, a browse abandonment and a shopping cart abandonment situation. That shopping cart abandonment is a much higher intent action, and that is the one that you're going to want to trigger your automated email based off of, and not send that browse abandonment email. So that's just a quick example of how you could potentially have actions sort of clashing with each other. And it's also worth pointing out that because most triggered emails are multifold more effective than any kind of broadcast email you could send, you might also consider suppressing any non-spectacular broadcast email that you might be sending out around the same time. That focuses that subscriber's attention on that email that you really want them to read and act on, rather than diverting their attention with something else. And then lastly, adopt a customer service mentality with your automated emails. Really think about, the best in-store rep you might have possibly ever had, your best customer service agent. What are the things that they would do to help your subscribers, and sort of build automations based on that. If someone's filling out a form to register for an event and they abandon, maybe there was some confusion about costs or how to get a hotel or whatever it might be. There's some kind of confusion there. And so maybe you trigger an email, for that, that form not being complete. You trigger an email that gives them like FAQs and tries to answer some of their questions or uncertainties that they might have had around signing up to attend that event. So think about it in terms of like fixing things, like fixing confusion and answering questions. Shopping cart abandonment emails, again, are sort of another great example. When people abandon, it's maybe because they don't understand the financing options. Maybe it's because they're not completely sold on the product that they put in their cart. Maybe maybe they'd be open to seeking some alternative recommendations. So think about these things in terms of like, what problems can I solve? What answers can I provide for folks' questions? Try to anticipate. I find that if you do your automated programs in that fashion, you tend to be in a very helpful, positive situation. Now let's talk about pop-ups, and I wanted to talk about pop-ups in particular because Mark Schaefer in his post said that this is one of the activities, this is one of the behaviors that we know people hate, but we use anyway. That said, our research has found that pop-ups are very successful. Successful email marketing programs are 42% more likely than less successful ones to use light boxes, exit intent pop-ups, and similar forms. I think the issue here is that they can absolutely be very annoying if you don't control them. And so we think this is a tool that has a lot of value, but you need to build some parameters into it. And so first of all, you need to thoroughly test the effect of the timing, messaging, and frequency of pop-ups. If you pop up an email sign-up form every time I visit your website, and it doesn't matter how many times I dismiss it, you always serve it up, that's really annoying. However, just because someone dismisses it once doesn't mean that they're never interested in signing up for email, but I think you'd want to put some delays on that. Maybe you'd want to see some other positive behaviors before you present that sign-up opportunity again. And also, with that in mind, you might also really look at alternatives to pop-ups, such as more prominent static placement of email sign-up forms on your website. In the era of pop-ups, we definitely have seen that a lot of email sign-up forms have gotten pushed down well below the fold on a lot of home pages and other pages of folks' websites, and that definitely suppresses your list growth. You might do some testing to see if you can elevate that back up above the fold. The folks over at Holistic Email Marketing are about to release some research that I was privy to see beforehand, and it includes a discussion of subscription practices and where sign-up forms are on websites. And I very much hope everyone puts that on their list of things to check out. So if you want to look at other additional ways in which some brands are manipulating and abusing their subscribers to their own detriment. Check out this six manipulative email tactics that disrespect subscribers and hurt marketers on the Litmus blog. So just to summarize on technology misuse, use the right tools for the right situation, set up smart logic and conditions to reduce annoyance. Also, definitely beware some lauded examples. Some tactics are wrongly praised by the media and experts for what I like to call cleverness. So for instance, there was this article in Architectural Digest about this Brooklinen email that went out, and their headline was, did Brooklinen just send the most genius marketing email ever, or was it a genuine mistake? And this was the email. It was made to look like Mark, the digital marketing intern, had forwarded this promotional email that was supposed to go out the next day. It looks like he accidentally forwarded it to Brooklinen's full email list a day before it was supposed to go out. First of all, people love mistakes. They love sort of apology emails. The Schadenfreude, like we love to see other people mess up. So definitely this email got a lot of attention. Also, the idea that they weren't supposed to have access to this, so it made it seem exclusive, and that got people's attention. This was heavily discussed on Twitter, and I couldn't help but chime in and say that I didn't agree that tricking, manipulating, and lying to subscribers was a genius tactic. And I also pointed out that even as weak as can spam is, it does forbid misleading sender names and subject lines, and this email definitely did both of those things. There were plenty of other people on Twitter that were pointing out that this was definitely a ruse and not a genuine mistake. And some people definitely did not appreciate being manipulated and likened it to cheap tricks and Nigerian check writers. So definitely a lot of negativity. There was also, I'll be honest, a lot of positivity, but mainly it was because people felt really bad for Mark, who may not exist, but everyone was defending poor Mark, and they were launching campaigns, #justice for Mark, so that he wouldn't get fired for making this mistake. People were identifying with Mark and saying, oh, like we've all been there, we've all made that mistake, and oh, we wish Mark well. And again, imagine how these people felt when they realized that Mark was made up and doesn't exist, and if there is actually someone named Mark there at Brooklinen who's some kind of an intern, again, this wasn't a genuine mistake from Mark. So this is all sort of ginned up. So imagine how those people felt after, sort of connecting with Mark and defending him. So this email was very similar to this one from West Elm, a U.S. home goods retailer. They sent this email back in 2015, and the subject line was, "Thanks for your order." And this was an April Fool's joke that unfortunately sparked a lot of identity theft concerns. It was a receipt from the future. A lot of people did not find it to be very funny, and they said so on social media. They said it was very deceptive and unethical. People shared their stories about how their identities had been stolen recently and how this email from West Elm gave them essentially PTSD. Some people said that they were unsubscribing because of this dirty trick. Even on April Fools, people do not like being the butt of jokes. But again, this is an email that got lauded in the industry. So just because it's lauded doesn't mean it's something that you should do. Sometimes emails attract praise for the wrong reasons. You need to really make sure you look at what consumers are saying. If you had tuned in to to Twitter on either of those examples, you would have seen that the wind was not blowing in a good direction. And just because one company does something doesn't mean you should too. Don't be a lemming and fall people over the cliff. Let's talk about data-driven failure. This, I think, is sort of at the crux of Mark Schaefer's article. And we feel that when you use the wrong metrics, they can confidently lead you to the wrong conclusions. And that's a huge problem. It's not enough just to simply have metrics. Brands need to understand what those metrics mean and also what they don't mean. And a good case in point is subject lines and open rates. So pop quiz, which of these two subject lines, subject line A or subject line B, perform better? Subject line A got a 20% open rate and subject line B got a 25% open rate. Which do you think performed better? Hopefully you're saying that it's unclear. There's not enough data to tell. Open rate is not enough information. And that's because the goal of a subject line isn't to generate opens, it's to generate openers who are likely to convert. You don't want just any old people to open that email. You want the right people. You want people with intent. You want people that have intent aligned with your message. This, I think, is very emblematic of what we sometimes see with data, is that data is numbers, but behind the numbers are people, and you don't ever want to lose sight of that. So it's not about opens, it's about openers. It's about who opens it and whether or not they are likely to convert. So if you look at, if we get a little bit more information, subject line A also got a 10% click rate, whereas subject line B got a 9% click rate. That's better. It looks like we're leaning towards A now. Most businesses would be very happy to have more clicks, even if it means they got a little bit less in terms of opens. But we should be asking ourselves, do we have even more data? Hopefully we do. Oh, and then we learned that subject line A got 5% conversion rate versus a 3% conversion rate for subject line B. So A is the clear winner in this case. Whereas in the beginning, when we just looked at open rates, we were leaning towards B. So, and the principle here to understand is that you want to make sure you're looking at deep metrics and not relying too heavily on surface metrics. Having a big list is awesome. Having a productive email list is spectacular, and that's really what you want. Everybody wants lots of opens, but all businesses want more email conversions. Same thing with web traffic versus sales conversions, and campaign metrics are nice. It's great you have like a great campaign, but you want to be looking at things holistically and looking at your subscriber metrics. Certainly in recent years, there's been a lot of discussion about clickbaity headlines on Facebook and on various websites, and that can lead to a lot of traffic, but it doesn't lead to quality traffic, and it doesn't lead to the kind of intent that you want, because people just end up feeling tricked. And so subject lines are the same way, abusing permission to get a big list that's full of people that aren't really interested in what you have to say. All of these are kind of the route to disaster. So another pop quiz, we have another email campaign. You have two different emails. Email A gets a 20% open rate and a 0.3% opt-out rate, and email B got a 25% open rate and a 0.8% opt-out rate. Based on sort of the average opt-out rate across the industry is, roughly 0.5%. A got fewer opens, but the opt-out rate was below average, so that's good. But B got higher opens, but the opt-out rate was significantly above average. That's something you really want to look at. You also want to look at what happens next. What happens with that next email you send? You want to look at things in context, holistically. And we found that with email A, that the next email that was sent, people who had received email version A previously, their open rate was pretty good, 22%, but folks who had received that version B email previously, their open rate was much lower. So what we found is that in this case, this hypothetical case, that A caused much less churn and much less fatigue. So you got to keep an eye on the bigger picture. That's probably an email that probably used a deceptive subject line, kind of like those examples we talked about a couple of minutes ago. And we did some consumer research with Fluent, and we found that 54% of consumers said that they had felt cheated or tricked or deceived into opening a promotional email by that email's subject line. And that's not where you want to be. You really want to be focusing on maximizing the value of your subscriber, not on maximizing the result of your campaign. And it's when you get very campaign centric that you start doing kind of tricky, overly clever campaigns and subject lines instead of trying to deliver value and build a relationship. So to recap on data-driven failure, you really want to focus on deep metrics, not surface metrics. And you don't want to get trapped in campaign thinking. You're trying to build relationships over time. And if you keep that in mind, that will hopefully keep you honest. So to bring all this together, let's talk about holistic email performance. We think data is awesome, and data itself is not a problem. However, the problem is that you get into these situations where you're not measuring the full effect of the tactics that you're using. And that's what creates problems, is thinking you have all the data when you don't. So every email you send, we need to recognize has internal stakeholders within your channel and within elsewhere in the business. So you're going to have channel goals, sales goals, and business goals. So you've got your own email channel goals, but then you have other goals outside of the email channel. And you also have external stakeholders in the form of inbox providers and subscribers. Both of you have a very powerful say in your future. So if you look at an email campaign as like dropping a rock in a pool of water, it creates this splash, and it's sort of a four-directional splash where you're definitely you're starting with that email campaign and the engagement that you get from that, but you're also going to want to look at your email campaign success in terms of the email conversions and email revenue that email is driving. All that is really important. You're also going to want to look at the effect of that email campaign on other channels within your organization. So you want to take an omni-channel look. You want to see what's happening in social as a result of that email campaign. You want to see what's happening in terms of maybe calls to your call center or store traffic. Even an email that isn't opened, even an email that's just delivered but unopened, can have a significant impact on store traffic and calls to your call center and other types of activities. So you're going to want to make sure that you're not ignoring that part of the equation. But also, any email campaign that you send is going to have effects on external shareholders in terms of inbox providers. So Gmail and Yahoo and everybody else, they're going to look at what effect your email campaign is having on their users. They're looking at spam complaints. They're looking at emails that were deleted without being opened. They're looking at foldering activity. They're looking at forwards and replies. And they want to make sure that that email is not causing harm to their user base. And then lastly, last but not least, subscriber reactions can include things like unsubscribes and complaints that sort of end that relationship with them. So all four of those things are important, and you may not have great visibility into all four of those things. And the big important thing here is to recognize when you don't have good visibility into those things. That will make you more cautious. That will cause you to ask more questions. It will cause you to rely more on your gut, your instincts, and as Mark Schaefer says, your common sense. when you know that you don't know this particular bit of information. So you want to look at all 4 of those things. But every email you send also is part of your ongoing overall email program success, your growth goals that you might have over time. And also every email you send is part of an ongoing relationship that you have with inbox providers and subscribers. So you want to look at, not just campaigns, but your program and relationships over time. So you also want to look at your email program success over time. That might be your email marketing ROI. It might be your email program revenue and profitability. You're also going to want to look at that omni-channel influence over time. That can have a really big impact depending on what kind of strategies you put in place. So for instance, if one of your goals is to reduce calls to your call center because your call center is a major cost center, you could definitely run a lot of email campaigns, especially automated campaigns that would try to proactively answer those questions and kind of reduce calls to your call centers regarding certain kinds of issues. At the same time, you also might want to increase calls to your call center. Say you're an insurance provider, which call centers are a major driver of sales for insurance companies because their products are rather complicated. So it sort of depends on the goals at your particular company. But you're going to want to make sure that you're taking that sort of big picture company-wide approach into consideration. And then in terms of inbox providers, you're going to want to look at your delivered rate over time, your inbox placement rate over time. And you're going to want to look at how many times you were blacklisted and how many times you were blocked. Look at that sort of relationship over time. And then again, last but not least, your subscriber relationships. You're going to want to look at your list size, your list growth, your churn rate, inactivity rates, your subscriber lifetime value. All of those things are really immensely powerful, probably among the most powerful things that you can measure. So you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at sort of all 4 quadrants over campaigns and over sort of looking at a sort of holistic program level. So with that, I say thank you. You can check out the recording and the slides from this webinar on the Litmus blog on Monday. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Chad. That was awesome. I know I could barely keep up with tweeting and answering some of the questions that were coming in during the webinar. So let's see where we should start. Actually, I think I saw some chatter popping up about list rental in the beginning. And I think there is a little bit of perhaps a misconception or a misunderstanding about who bears the responsibility in a list rental scenario. And so there was a viewpoint that it's the vendor that's doing the list rental, so the person providing the list for rent, that's taking up or exposing themselves to risk rather than the brand. And I know that we did some research with Fluent where we asked, why do you report emails as spam? And 51% of people said they marked an email as spam because they didn't knowingly or willingly subscribe to receive the emails. So knowing what you know about consumers and how they define spam, what would you say about the risk and responsibility between a list rental vendor and the brand using the vendor?
Yeah, I could totally see folks that are trying to get people to rent their list as using that as an excuse. Think about it this way. Think about this in the analog world. I'm a magazine and I sell ads. I allow people to get their message in front of my magazine audience, right? Nobody says, hey, that magazine is taking on a lot of risk by allowing me to buy an ad in their magazine. Nobody says that because the magazine realizes that there's risk there, and so they don't accept all ads. They have guidelines for who and what they say it's okay to advertise in their magazine because they bear the brunt of any sort of misalignment between an advertiser and the audience of the magazine. So they protect their asset, which is their audience, by only working with advertisers that are in alignment. And that same principle should be in effect in list rental agreements. The folks that own the audience, that own the list, should not be willing to rent their list, put your message in front of them if they think that there's a misalignment. That protects them, and frankly, it protects you to make sure that you're getting in front of an audience that makes sense for what you're trying to sell. So yeah, I think that's where you look at that sort of that magazine analog example, and you see that, that it just doesn't make any sense, and it's just an excuse.
Thank you, Chad. So I also saw a lot of questions coming in around consent. I think I counted at least 5. And so I'm going to try to recap some of those questions here in an effort to provide a variety of use cases that consent might be unknown or come under question. So one person asked if the responsibility for complying with spam laws or sending through countries with those hefty laws falls on the client, the business, like the person sending the email, or the ESP or the sending platform. Say, for instance, you're using MailChimp or Constant Contact. So is it brand's responsibility, the person using the software, to get consent and to comply with laws, or is it the tool's job to comply with the laws? Not too different from the list rental vendor question, actually.
Yeah, so it's absolutely the sender's responsibility. The sender's name is on that email. That's who's responsible. The tool is not responsible. The service is not responsible. Although that said, certainly all reputable email service providers have essentially like bylaws and things that you're agreeing to when you use their service. And one of them at any reputable ESP is that you are not uploading purchase lists to their platform. They don't want to be a part of that either. So they don't want to be, they don't want any prospect of being sort of complicit or turning a blind eye to people using their platform to spam people or certainly breaking laws. So yes, the onus is absolutely on the sender, but certainly ESPs have a little bit of skin in the game as well. But most of that burden, like 90+% of it, is absolutely on the sender.
When you say the sender, you're not talking about the technology doing the sender. You're talking about the brand using the technology, right? It's not Constant Contact or MailChimp's responsibility. It's you, the brand, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely. I mean, it's not MailChimp's name that's in the sender name of that email. It's the brand's name. The brand is responsible.
All right. For all other questions regarding consent, if you look at the chat functionality in the GoToWebinar box, I've posted several links in there about GDPR, how you can get ready for GDPR, what consent means, and how you can help get ready. We have a ton of resources like this on the Litmus blog, and we'll be sure to put them in the email and the follow-up communications around that. I'm seeing just tons and tons of chatter about GDPR, especially coming through with the chat. I know even Litmus right now is heads down. We, our in-house counsel, our CMO, me, I'm our VP of marketing. We're all in conversations all the time right now about how we can become GDPR compliant. And it's, let's just say it's a really big project. And I think it's having unintended consequences for standard business practices all across America that do business with people in Europe. So it's been a really, let's say, exciting process becoming GDPR compliant, but we're going through that process right now at Litmus. All right.
Yeah, that's certainly a big can of worms. We could definitely talk a very long time about that. But we do have some great.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We have some great resources on the Litmus blog that can get you started.
Yeah. And as we get closer to GDPR compliance too, we'll probably be looking at rolling out some webinars about what we've done and that sort of thing. So stay tuned in this space. So speaking of GDPR, a couple more questions about that. How can you know what country the email address is coming from to ensure you're complying with that country's laws? And so, at least for Litmus's perspective, what you can either do one or two things. You can either become GDPR compliant for your entire email program, which is frankly a little bit of the easier solution, but it might have a larger business impact, right? If you're rolling out compliance for everyone on your list, that's a lot different than if you're just rolling it out for a portion of your list. So Erin, our email marketing manager here inside of Litmus, has been doing a lot of analysis to find out, trying to identify where our email addresses are coming from. And so actually Litmus's own email analytics is one of the sources that we're using for that data. We offer the ability to geolocate where opens are coming from. So we're using a combination of our own email analytics data, and you can use this too. All you need is a Litmus subscription. But we're also looking at other sources of that data, either IP address sourced or other sources to find out where addresses are coming from. The other thing that we're doing is we're rolling out functionality on our website that will, again, use your IP address to identify whether or not you're in an EU country. And then depending on the sophistication level of your program and the resources that you have available, you can trigger or not trigger those consent checkboxes based upon the location and consent area of the country in order to know where that consent is coming from, if that kind of makes sense. So definitely something that you need to rely on technology, and it might vary depending on the resources you have in-house or the vendors you have available.
Yeah, that's all great advice. You might also, I'm thinking of a lot of, I'm thinking websites like Amazon and a bunch of other sites where they have country-specific websites. That's another way that you can start to kind of divide lines. I think that so first of all, I am not a lawyer, and I am not giving you legal advice, but I think the thing to keep in mind is that you want to be making a good faith effort. Technology is not perfect. Geolocation is not perfect. But you want to be making a good faith effort to be in compliance with these laws.
All right, let's see if we can sneak in maybe one or two more questions. So we had a couple people ask about getting buy-in. How do you convince a higher up, a marketing director, a VP, that you either need to practice good list hygiene and scrub your lists and only send relevant emails, or to change their mind about some of these tactics? Basically, how do you convince someone that doesn't get it that these things are bad and to change their minds in your activities?
Yeah, so we've been writing more and more about sort of buy-in and communications between email marketers and executives on the Litmus blog. There's definitely some articles there about buy-in, getting buy-in for more budget and how to communicate effectively. But I think the first thing to recognize is that this is part of your job. This has to be something that's a priority for you, because executives and leadership have an incredible amount of influence on how we operate. We did some research that showed that I think it was 51% of email marketers within the past year had been forced to do something that they strongly disagreed with in terms of an email tactic or what have you. That sucks, but it is on email marketers to continue to try to educate executives on why these things are good or bad, and to use what data they have available to them to do that. We highly recommend that we like to think we provide a lot of resources to do that in terms of the research that we do. Those of you who haven't looked at our 2017 State of Email Deliverability report, I encourage you to do that. That has a lot of great information about the prevalence of blocking and blacklisting, and lots of information about acquisition sources and how common they are and which ones are problematic. You can executives like that kind of big picture data. And if you can show that your practices are not the norm, that they are in the deep minority, that kind of data can be very convincing to executives. But also, as hopefully I made the point, the arguments in this presentation today, you need to recognize where you don't have good visibility. And I think as an industry, marketers don't always like to measure the negative outcomes of the things they do. They tend to focus on the positive things, and the negative ones are just as important. And we, again, like to take sort of a company-centric look at metrics and not always looking at the impact it's having on our subscribers and our customers. That's sort of all on us to make sure that we're providing those alternative viewpoints that maybe executives aren't always seeing.
Great advice and a good way to wrap it up because we are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Chad. There's been tons of comments about great presentation and how much everyone learned. So if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, I'm so sorry, but we will do our best to answer as many leftover questions as we could in the blog post that's coming your way on Monday. So just a reminder that everyone will receive the recording and the slides from today's session, as well as some of the answers to your questions in Monday's blog post. So thanks so much for joining us and have a lovely rest of your day.